Imagine hijacking a plane, demanding a fortune in cash, jumping into a thunderstorm from 10,000 feet, and vanishing forever. No name, no body, no trace. This isn't a movie. This is the true story of the most legendary unsolved case in American history, D.B. Cooper. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear has baffled the FBI for over 50 years.
November 24th, 1971. It was the day before Thanksgiving. A man walked into Portland International Airport and bought a one-way ticket under the name Dan Cooper. He paid in cash, $20, and boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305 bound for Seattle. He was quiet, well-dressed in a black suit, white shirt, black tie, and sunglasses. He took seat 18C near the rear of the plane and ordered a bourbon with soda. Then calmly, he handed a folded note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. She assumed it was just another flirtatious note until he leaned in and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Inside the note, demands for $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle. The crew alerted the cockpit. The hijack was real, but the man never raised his voice or showed panic. He was calm, collected, polite, and deadly serious. Florence Schaffner read the note, stunned. She asked to see the bomb. Cooper calmly opened his black briefcase. Inside were 8 red cylinders, wires, and a battery. It looked real. The crew notified the captain, William Scott, who in turn radioed Seattle Air Traffic Control. Without alarming passengers, the captain followed Cooper's demands. He informed them the plane had a minor mechanical delay and would circle before landing. Meanwhile, Northwest Orient President Donald Nyrup approved the ransom and parachutes. Passengers drank, chatted, and read magazines, unaware they were in the middle of an unfolding skyjacking. Cooper remained composed. He was described as courteous, even paying for his drinks. He let passengers go to the restroom and reassured the crew, "No one will get hurt if you do what I say." Below, Seattle authorities scrambled to gather the cash and gear. Above, 36 souls flew in a pressurized capsule of tension under the quiet watch of a man with a plan. As Flight 305 circled over Seattle for 2 hours, FBI agents prepared Cooper's demands. They gathered $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, most with serial numbers recorded for tracing. 4 parachutes were secured from a local skydiving school, 2 main chutes and 2 reserves. The plane landed at 5:39 p.m. Cooper allowed all 36 passengers to disembark in exchange for the ransom and parachutes. Only the pilot, co-pilot, flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant remained aboard. Cooper inspected the parachutes and the money with great care. He was methodical, rejecting a military parachute in favor of civilian gear with manual ripcords. He made more demands. The plane was to fly to Mexico City at minimum speed and altitude, with flaps down, and the rear stairs lowered in flight. He wanted the cabin depressurized so the rear stair door could open midair. The crew reluctantly agreed. As night fell, the jet lifted back into the sky, carrying a hijacker, a fortune, and a secret plan. It was now 7:40 p.m. Flight 305 lifted off once again, but this time it was flying into the unknown. The aircraft followed Cooper's exact instructions: low altitude, slow speed, and a heading toward Mexico. Cooper sat calmly near the rear staircase. He ordered the flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, to join the cockpit crew. She described him as composed, intelligent, even considerate. He tied the ransom money into the reserve parachute using parachute cords. He carefully selected 1 parachute to wear. As the plane passed over the forests of southern Washington, Cooper began his final preparations. He took off his tie, clipped on the parachute harness and strapped the money to his body. At 8 p.m., the cockpit crew noticed a warning light. The rear stairs had been lowered. They felt the aircraft lurch slightly. Cooper had opened the stair door mid-flight and leapt into the darkness below. Rain, wind, and 160 knots of speed. But Cooper vanished into that stormy night, somewhere over the dense forests near Ariel, Washington. And just like that, he was gone. At exactly 8:13 p.m., the aircraft jolted. A pressure shift confirmed someone had left the plane, but Cooper was no longer aboard. The crew landed safely in Reno, Nevada, as instructed, and the FBI stormed the aircraft. But Cooper was gone. No parachute, no money, no clue. The FBI launched one of the most extensive manhunts in American history. Hundreds of agents combed the forests of Washington and Oregon by foot, helicopter, and boat. They calculated the likely jump zone using the plane's airspeed, weather, and flight path, narrowing it to a region near Lake Merwin. Still, no trace of Cooper, not a shoe print, not a bill. The media exploded with the story, dubbing the hijacker D.B. Cooper, a misreport that stuck. The name burned into the American psyche. A ghost story in a suit and tie. Who was he? A criminal mastermind? A former paratrooper? A myth in the making? The world had questions, but Cooper had answers, and he took them with him into the night. D.B. Cooper became an instant legend. He pulled off the only unsolved skyjacking in U.S. history. The media turned him into a folk hero, a criminal who hurt no one and outwitted the system. Songs were written, T-shirts printed, bars renamed in his honor. The FBI investigated hundreds of suspects, from former paratroopers to airline employees. Every lead turned cold. Every clue led to a dead end. In 1972, a copycat hijacker named Richard McCoy pulled off a similar heist, but he was caught and ruled out as Cooper. Conspiracy theories ran wild. Some believed Cooper died in the fall. Others claimed he escaped to South America or lived quietly in rural America under a new identity. Despite intense efforts, the FBI was left with only a clip-on tie, some cigarette butts, and a sketch. Cooper's identity was a blank slate, no fingerprint match, no DNA confirmation. All they had was a name and a mystery. D.B. Cooper had become something more than a fugitive. He had become a legend. The FBI launched NORJAC, Northwest Hijacking, their most exhaustive manhunt at the time. Over 800 suspects were interviewed. All were cleared. They tracked the serial numbers on the ransom bills through banks, casinos, racetracks. Even international alerts were issued. Still, nothing. Cooper had vanished without using the money. Or maybe he'd simply vanished with it. Agents studied every passenger on the plane. They analyzed handwriting, speech patterns, flight knowledge, and parachute experience. One key clue stood out: Cooper's knowledge of aviation. He knew the Boeing 727's rear stair could open in flight, a detail unknown to most. He also knew to request civilian parachutes, not military ones. This wasn't just a man with a plan. This was someone with serious technical knowledge, possibly military, maybe even CIA. But the clues stopped there. The tie he left behind held DNA, but no match. The cigarette butts were discarded. And in the wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, time swallowed every trace of the man who jumped into history. Over the years, a long list of potential suspects emerged. Some were military veterans. Others were ex-convicts, pilots, or outdoorsmen. One name stood out early: Dwayne Weber, On his deathbed, he whispered to his wife, "I'm D.B. Cooper." She claimed he had nightmares about jumping from planes. He had a knee injury. He'd even taken her to the Columbia River, near the suspected landing zone, but DNA didn't match. Then came Robert Rackstraw, a former paratrooper and explosives expert. He had a fake identity, a criminal record, and knew aviation. His military background lined up, and he enjoyed teasing investigators. But again, the FBI dismissed him. Every promising suspect crumbled under scrutiny. Even Lyndoyle Cooper, proposed by his niece, fit the profile. A quiet loner with military ties and a dark sense of humor. But no hard evidence ever surfaced. Time wore down memories. Deaths erased possibilities. The mystery only deepened. Each suspect brought hope and ended in silence. In 1980, 9 years after the hijacking, a new clue surfaced. A young boy named Brian Ingram was digging along the banks of the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington. He uncovered 3 bundles of decaying $20 bills, totaling $5,800. The serial numbers? They matched the D.B. Cooper ransom money. The bills were water-damaged, brittle, but unmistakable. How did they get there? Had Cooper lost the money in the fall? Or had he buried it and died later? The location raised more questions than answers. It didn't match the projected flight path or jump zone. FBI divers searched the area, but found nothing more. For a moment, hope reignited. The only physical trace of Cooper since the night of the jump. But just like everything else in this case, the clue led nowhere. The rest of the money was never found. The boy kept some of the bills as souvenirs. The FBI was back at square one, but the legend had just been reborn. In 2008, a farmer in southwestern Washington found a decaying parachute buried in a field. Could it have been Cooper's? The FBI rushed in to examine the find, but after analysis, they determined it was too old, from World War II stock, not from the hijacking. Still, interest in the case surged again. The terrain where Cooper landed, likely dense woods, ravines, and rivers, could easily swallow a man forever. Some experts believed he didn't survive. Others argued Cooper was too smart, too calm, too prepared to fail. Maybe he landed safely, buried the gear, changed his name, and faded into small-town obscurity. The parachute find was another dead end, but it reminded the world the sky still held secrets. And Cooper's story wasn't over. Every so often, the past dug itself up, piece by piece. As official leads dried up, amateur sleuths took over. Thousands of online detectives built forums, maps, and theories. One group, called Citizen Sleuths, obtained the Cooper tie and scanned it under a microscope. They found rare metals, titanium and cerium, embedded in the fabric. Could Cooper have worked in the aerospace industry? Possibly Boeing or another aviation lab near Seattle? The theory added new intrigue. He might have been an engineer, a machinist, someone with access to high-level tech, and someone who knew how to disappear. Another researcher claimed Cooper used a decoy parachute, leaving behind one rigged with sewing instructions and fake cords. Every new theory brought fresh hope. But without fingerprints or DNA matches, the FBI couldn't confirm any of them. The man in the seat 18C remained a ghost, but his mystery was alive and well. In July 2016, after 45 years, the FBI made a stunning announcement. They were closing the case. No more field investigations, no more suspects. They had exhausted every lead. Still, they left the door open. If real, verifiable evidence appeared, they'd reopen it. But the official manhunt was over. The announcement shocked Cooper enthusiasts. For many, it was more than a case. It was a national mystery, a legend woven into American culture. TV specials, books, and documentaries exploded in popularity. Every year, fans gathered near Ariel, Washington, for CooperCon, celebrating the man who vanished without a trace. The FBI's silence only amplified the myth. Cooper had beaten the system and slipped into eternity. Even in closing the file, the FBI couldn't close the story. D.B. Cooper became more than a name. He became a symbol, the perfect criminal, cool, calm, no violence, no casualties. In a world drowning in chaos, Cooper felt like a rebel with class. He inspired songs, tattoos, and even Halloween costumes. To some, he was a villain. To others, a modern-day Robin Hood. He struck once, then disappeared forever. Maybe he's long dead, or maybe he's still out there, watching his own story unfold. Every time a new theory appears, headlines still shout, "Has D.B. Cooper been found?" And yet, they never have. He's not just a man anymore. He's a myth wrapped in a black tie and falling through the sky. What if Cooper made it? Landed clean, hit the gear, disappeared into a new life. Maybe he lived in quiet suburbia, mowing lawns and watching the news cover his legend. Maybe he changed names, married, had kids. He might have read his own FBI sketch in the paper and smiled. He never spent the money in one place. He never talked, just lived with a secret. What would it be like to be that man? The last great American outlaw, not caught by justice, but claimed by time. No one will ever know. And maybe that's exactly how he planned it. November 24th, 1971. One man stepped onto a plane and jumped into history. No face, no trace, no ending, just a perfect crime, and a sky full of questions. He became an American legend, not because he vanished, but because no one ever found out who he really was. D.B. Cooper isn't just a name. He's the symbol of what we can't explain, what we wish we could be, free, bold, untouchable. He lives not in handcuffs, but in the stories we tell, and the skies he disappeared into.